I'm back to being live. I'm going to post this link just in case you guys do want to see my cards. Hi everyone. I'm starting to stream again weekly, but less cuz and I've known this for a while. Like I can only do this kind of thing for so long, for so many days. Live streaming takes a lot out of you. It's difficult, especially when you were alone, because then it can get weird. It can get ranty, or it can just go like off, which honestly I think is fine. But I don't necessarily like it, so it's not fine for me. But anyways, we are here to have Asian mental health talks. And they're going to be inspired by my Golden Goddess Affirmation cards. So the link is there. Actually, let me post that over here. The link to my cards is there in the chat for everyone when I'm able to press Control V. Okay, there you go. The card that we are reading today is, and some of you can see this and some of you will be backwards, taking charge of my life isn't simple when I feel like I owe my life to others. That does not mean I cannot take charge. That does not mean I am weak. It means I am on a journey to free myself. So this affirmation is complicated and it is very long because it is approaching. It is approaching. My words are very strange today. Yeah, it's, oh my God, it's addressing. Oh, yes, brain. It's addressing something that's really difficult that I feel in the Asian community with many Asian people. Being a Filipino, I felt this myself, where there is this internal struggle that I have where I feel that, yes, I am a super individual and I am part of my family. And these two should be able to just be like this. Be like, yeah, true. But a lot of the times it feels like this and it feels like wrestling. There is I guess I'll call it the stereotype. The fight of, East versus West, like being in a more Western individual culture versus an Eastern societal collective culture. And I think that's real. I definitely think that's definitely part of it. But I also don't want it to make it that simplistic, because that's just a part of it, but that's just for overall context is, no, that's there. For the West, it's very individual based, right? Like America, super like my individual rights. And here is Asia, who, I mean, they want individual rights too, but they're very much a collective. And the societies there more so nurture and hold precious like those ideals of being collective, and both have great sides to it. You know what I mean? Being part of a collective that really cares, and it tries to be more altruistic. Great, wonderful. Having individual freedoms to express yourself and to not become a hive mind. Great. And again, I feel like these two things should just exist like this and be merry, but it feels like a fight, or at least for me, it's felt like a fight. I will read the card again. Taking charge of my life isn't simple when I feel I owe my life to others. That doesn't mean I cannot take charge of my life. That doesn't mean I am weak. It means I am on a journey to free myself. So let's go line by line. Taking charge of my life isn't simple when I feel I owe my life to others. That's what I'm talking about with that internal struggle of being an individual and being part of a collective. In this particular situation, I'm thinking like family, and how there is that pressure, or at least pressure that I felt, and I know many Asians, many API, many honestly like minorities feel, where you want what you want. Oh, and especially like in my case, I am the child of immigrants, right? So I want what I want. I see all these new things in America. I'm obviously Americanized because I was born in America. My parents are immigrants. They want what they want for me, coming from that perspective, knowing what they've left behind, and these things clash. And for some Asian families, it gets real hard because the clash is super real and parents don't want to let go of that control. They, because they brought you here, sometimes the parents feel really entitled to be like, well, I get to control what you do because I sacrificed all this stuff. I do have your best interest in mind. And so you're going to be a doctor or a nurse, right? That's happening. And it sucks because not everyone wants to be a doctor or a nurse. My parents thought I was going to become a psychologist, which at first they thought was very odd. Okay, maybe I should give some context to this. So I went to college to study psychology. I picked that because I couldn't think of anything else. I was just like, I don't know. I gotta go to college. I really just like want to dance and do stuff, but apparently that's not it. So I went to school for psychology, and my mom was like, my parents were like, about it, but it was like in the health field, so it was cool. Later on, I found out, or my mom said to me, I never understood why you wanted to be a psychologist. And then I found all these letters from your friends in your room, and you were giving them advice, and now I get it. And this is also partially side story of, again, parents wanting to have like control and thinking my mom felt like she actually could read those letters, those private letters that were folded up in origami, or at least in special ways, because that's what you did when you were young. She read them all, which was not great. Right? So she felt like she had access to that, and that was fine. And then, so yeah, I did psychology and stuff. And then when I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology and dance. And then I went on to choose dance. And then for the next, well, how old was I when I graduated? Basically, like 5 years after I graduated, for those next 5 years, my parents kept asking me when I was going to go get my master's for psychology. Because again, not dance. And again, that brings us back to what you want versus what your family wants or the collective wants. And it's really hard. It's hard that making those choices, and even now, like, they're not, I don't have resolved feelings about them. I do have resolve in that, yeah, I chose to dance and I'm here dancing and making art, but I still feel bad sometimes. I definitely still feel like a disappointment. I still feel like I let them down. Those are feelings that I still have now. And that's why this affirmation card is saying it's not just simple, because I shouldn't make that face and then go, I love my parents. That's really sad. No, I love my parents. I love them a lot. And I know they mean well, but they were still hurting me. They were still causing me pain, and for me to doubt myself, and a lot of shame and guilt. And I know that's not what they wanted, maybe shallowly a little bit into shaming me to hopefully doing the right, quote unquote, right thing. But I know it's out of love, but it doesn't matter. It still hurt me. Things were difficult. And so we get to the second part, right? That does not mean I can't take charge. Obviously, I did take charge of my life. I made my own choices. Again, really difficult, and did come with some pain, did come with some sacrifice and grief. That does not mean I am weak. Just because you struggle with wanting to please your parents and make them happy, it doesn't mean you're weak. And I think sometimes we think that, at least for me, like, I am American. I'm Americanized. I was born here. So even though I do have like a more Asian Filipino upbringing, like, I'm still American. And so I always feel that, I'm just going to call it like the Western side of me, or like the American side of me, like that part does feel like this big swell to just want to be really independent and have things my way and stuff. And that isn't necessarily bad, but it does become bad when it then just like starts to bully like the other part of me, right? There's nothing wrong with just like having an internal debate or seeing both sides. But when one side makes you feel bad about the other side, then that's a problem. So I want to say to my fellow Asians who are struggling, struggling and being like, why can't I just be quote unquote strong and just like do what I want and da 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 da? Like it's not that simple. It really isn't. Like you were raised a certain way. Your parents are there, like putting their influence. They've had an influence on you since your childhood. That's everyone. So it makes sense that it's a struggle, especially if you know they sacrifice so much for you. So it doesn't mean you're weak. No, it just means that this isn't a simple choice you're making. Taking charge of your life just isn't simple. Like it has so many different layers and connotations and different people, even though it's your own life. And you kind of have to decide if that's a problem for you or not. What does taking charge of your life look like for you? It doesn't mean that your parents can't have an influence on you. It doesn't mean that you can't go to them. It doesn't mean that you can't even try to appease everyone. If you actually think that that's going to make you happy, that's fine. But if you come to the point where, what they want is really making you unhappy and you're making these choices that don't even sit well with you, that's when you need to be like, I need to stop and really think about what you want because it is your life. So the last part of it means I am on a journey to free myself. And that's true. And it doesn't necessarily mean free yourself from your parents or family. It might also just be free yourself from this guilt and shame that you feel so that you can really make choices that you're happy with. And yes, that is so hard and complex. And again, that's why this freaking affirmation is so long. And it's honestly, I don't think it's the most eloquent, but it was the most, to me, when I wrote it made sense. It might not sound the most eloquent. I might have put it on a pretty background, but it made sense to me and it felt very real and it felt like something that I could really attach to and something that I think many other people could attach to, especially being Asian and having that of your parents being like, choose this, Trixie. Don't you want to be secure in life with money and stuff? I understand. But again, not helpful. Yeah. So again, I'm going to read it one more time. Taking charge of my life isn't simple when I feel I owe my life to others. That doesn't mean I cannot take charge. That doesn't mean I am weak. It means I am on a journey to free myself. So I know I just talked a lot about family and that specific Asianified way of looking at it, which is what we're doing, Asian Mental Health Talks. I also just want to briefly talk about how that mentality that you have with your family and wanting to be loyal by doing what they want and say, right? You want to be loyal. You want to be a good member of the family. That need to want and please and make everything okay may transfer over to other relationships where someone else now, maybe a partner, may be taking control of your life and may want to. And I want to bring this up because I've been through this. My want to please my parents and the fact that I couldn't because I chose to be an artist, because I chose to do all these things I don't necessarily agree with, because it doesn't make my life secure. I took that. I made my decisions, and because it was unresolved within myself, I went, and went to a freaking boy. And I didn't take charge of my life there. I had this person kind of controlling my life, and it was not a great place to be. And I think that's a really important thing to realize, that when you grow up in one certain mentality, it's really easy to transfer that mentality to other relationships. And that's important to know. And it makes it even more important to know what you want so that doesn't happen, because you can be over here with your parents and resolve all that and still transfer all these things and not see that you're doing that because that's a pattern of behavior you're used to. And I think when it comes to romantic relationships, unfortunately, a lot of, I don't want to say thinking, that sounds like too much, but maybe thinking, but sometimes we want so much in a relationship and we want it to work out so much we're willing to let go of certain things. Like we're willing to look past or maybe not even pick up that, hey, I am exhibiting the same behavior. Or, hey, maybe this person's kind of exhibiting the same controlling behavior that these people over here were. And that can lead to a lot of unhappiness and suffering and pain, to be honest. So it's something we really have to look at. And I'm always going to be an advocate. I feel like advocate feels wrong, but I'm going to go with advocate. I'm always going to be an advocate of you taking charge of your life and taking responsibility. No, I will go with that. It's along, honestly, with my advocacy for mental health. A big thing that I really want to talk about is just taking responsibility. And it's something that I will say over and over again. I think it's really hard when you're struggling with your mental health to see all the reasons of why, like, it might be bad. And when you have a mental illness, and again, I'm talking from my perspective, remember that I'm not a psychologist or a professional. I'm a person living with mental health. I do have a BA in psychology, but mostly I think someone who's, most of my experience and like my knowledge comes from someone who's been in therapy for so long, and working on myself. So anyways, oh no, I lost it. That explanation made me lose it. No, come back. Oh yes, taking responsibility of your life is a big thing. You know, I didn't cause my mental illness. I still have to take responsibility of my life and the fact that I have it, and find ways to make my life better, find ways to cope with my mental illness. I think that's really hard. And it is fairly unfair. I will say that it's unfair. You know, when people do things to you and it causes like all like messes in your life, like, yeah, dude, that was not your fault. Like, some things aren't your fault and you still have to take responsibility for it. Taking charge of your life, you know, you didn't make yourself be born. That's a weird accent. You didn't make yourself be born. Some of the things that you were born into, like, you can't control. It's still up to you to take charge of your life and take responsibility for it and take responsibility for your happiness. Don't just look around and blame other things, or don't just look around and think you're helpless. Sometimes there are things you really cannot control. Actually, a lot of times there are things you cannot control, but there might be more little things that you can do that you might not even think is like taking charge of your life, but it is. Like, simply making the decision to every day have a minute to yourself to breathe and just think about your mental health. Like, you don't even have to figure anything out, but just like think about your mental health. That's you taking charge of your life. You're making decisions about your life to make yourself happy, to bring yourself peace. Taking charge doesn't also just like, it doesn't have to be like a really big thing, because then it feels like you can't do it, right? If you equate taking charge of your life to like, I need to abandon my family and change everything about how I talk and how I feel and blah, 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 probably not going to happen because that's like way too much. Start small. I really cannot speak today. Start small and understand again that it's difficult and it's okay that it is complicated and difficult. Just keep trying to figure it out. And I think that's how I'm going to end today. Yeah. Okay. No, I feel good about that. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for everyone who will be seeing this in the future. I hope this is really helpful. Again, my Golden Goddess Affirmation cards, they're on my website. You can buy them now. My Kickstarter ended. If you were part of my Kickstarter and you haven't sent me your address, please send it to me so I can send you the cards. And it's not on Kickstarter anymore, so if you buy them off my website, it will be a much more simple thing. So yes, thanks everybody. I will see you tomorrow. So I will be streaming Wednesdays at 12:30 about Asian mental health talks, inspired by my Golden Goddess Affirmation cards. And on Thursdays, I will be streaming about living with CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you want to see that, tune in tomorrow, 12:30. Bye, guys. And there. Oh, I should have done this in 10.